you've been following Google News and the general tech world for that matter, you would know there are few stories as complex and drawn out as the Department of Justice's antitrust lawsuit against Google Search. It's been a years-long legal battle with constant back and forth that can be genuinely hard to keep track of. But this week, we finally got a major decision on the consequences of that lawsuit, and the results are probably not what you'd expect. A judge has ruled on Google's punishment, quote unquote, for being considered a monopoly, and it's a decision that has massive implications for Chrome, Android, and the future of artificial intelligence. So real quick, let me catch you up to speed on what's been happening and why this is a big deal for Google, for us as Android enthusiasts, and what all this actually means moving forward. And of course, if you want to stay up to date on all Google news like this, consider subscribing to the 9 to 5 Google YouTube channel because we have a lot more coming your way. Back in August of 2024, Judge Amit Mehta officially ruled that Google holds an illegal monopoly in the online search market. Back at that time, the ruling was considered based on certain practices Google was engaging with, like the massive payments to AT&T, Verizon, and Samsung to be the default browser. There was also a call out of the $26 billion payment Google made to Apple, so Google Search was the first engine you accessed when opening Safari. And it was noted that because of these deals, it would be difficult for new competitors to gain users. So in total, all of these factors combined solidified the DOJ's position that Google engaged in monopolistic practices, which caused a lot of discussion on how to handle it. There were a few formal proposals like Google selling off Chrome or selling off Android, which was probably the worst case, most nuclear option for Google, and ultimately an official ruling was made on September 2nd, 2025 to discuss what their quote-unquote punishment would be. Long story short, the biggest takeaways is that Google will not have to sell its Chrome browser or the Android operating system. This was originally what the Department of Justice wanted in the first place, and avoiding it no doubt is a huge relief for Google. The court recognized that forcing a sale on Chrome and Android would have gone way beyond the case's focus on search and ultimately would have harmed consumers and Google's partners way more than it would have helped, which I do partially agree with. Personally, I think it would have been a messy, highly risky breakup, as the new owners of Chrome or Android would probably need years to get it running efficiently, and this transitional period would almost very likely be super noticeable to the average consumer. Chrome is weaved into so many Google products and services. It's not a self-contained unit anymore that can be easily picked up by another company unless it was absolutely massive, like Amazon, Microsoft, or Apple, which would effectively bring us right back where we are in the first place. The judge also ruled that Google can continue its multi-billion-dollar payment deals with companies like Apple and Mozilla to be the default search engine on their platforms, but it wasn't a total victory for Google, as there were some requirements that they would have to give. The biggest one is that Google will now be required to share some of its valuable search data with rivals. This aspect is a bit technical, but it seems the stipulations are search index data and user interaction data only, and there are some limits on the release of this information, like no ads data. It can only be released to quote-unquote qualified competitors, and it's a one-time snapshot of data, not reoccurring, at least at this time. The idea here is to give smaller companies a leg up by allowing them to access data that could help them improve their own search results and become more competitive. On top of that, Google is now barred from making exclusive deals that prevent other search engines or AI assistants from being pre-installed on devices. They can still pay to be the default, but they can't legally block a phone maker from also including DuckDuckGo or Perplexity, for example, right out of the box. And something that catches my curiosity about all of this is why this particular ruling. If a judge did actually find that Google was an illegal monopoly, why does the punishment seem not that harsh according to some people? And the answer, from my perspective, mainly revolves around the recent popularity of these AI chatbots. In his ruling, Judge Mehta repeatedly pointed out how much the tech world has changed since this case was initially filed back in 2020. He specifically noted that the huge boom of generative AI has created a new and powerful wave of competition for Google search. So chatbots from OpenAI, Perplexity, Anthropic, DeepSeek, and others, for example, are giving people entirely new ways to find information, and that in itself is a massive threat to Google's search dominance. Because of this new reality, the judge basically concluded that the market is already starting to correct itself through technological innovation. He argued that forcing a chaotic and messy breakup of Chrome would be a poor fit in this case and could cause substantial product degradation for users. In his view, less drastic measures like the data sharing and non-exclusive contracts are more than enough to level the playing field without directly punishing consumers. As you can imagine, the reaction to this decision has been intense and is really divided across the board. On one side, you have Google's critics and competitors who are effectively saying that this isn't enough. The CEO of DuckDuckGo said the remedies won't adequately address Google's behavior and that, quote, consumers will continue to suffer. Advocacy groups called this ruling an act of cowardice and a slap on the wrist, arguing that it essentially allows Google to protect its monopoly and use those profits to dominate the next era of AI. But on the other side, many see this as a pragmatic and modern ruling. They agree with the judge that a forced breakup would have been incredibly disruptive. The argument is that technological innovation from AI is a far more powerful and efficient solution to creating competition rather than heavy-handed government intervention. And even Google themselves are stating that this decision, quote, recognizes how much of the industry has changed through the advent of AI. So, with all this considered, what exactly is the next step? Well, unfortunately, we aren't even close to the end of this, as it is far from over. Google has already said that it plans to appeal the original ruling from 2020 that found them to be a monopoly in the first place. If they were to win that appeal, it would likely revert these recent punishments anyway. At the same time, the Department of Justice has basically hinted that they will be seeking additional relief, which tells me they don't think the punishments are tough enough to restore competition. This means we are looking at a long, drawn-out process of appeals and counter-appeals that will most likely be tied up in court for the next few years, potentially going all the way up to the Supreme Court. So ultimately, for you and me, our day-to-day experience of using Pixel phones, Chrome, and Google Search isn't going to change today, tomorrow, or even next month. This is a legal battle that will most likely have many updates between now and the final decision. What we saw this week was a pivotal moment where Google avoided what is the worst case scenario, largely because of the incredible rise of AI fundamentally changing the entire conversation around what it means to even compete with Google Search in the first place. But I am really curious what you all think. Do you think this was a fair ruling? Was it too lenient and a light slap on the wrist? Or was this a smart, forward-thinking decision with AI considered? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below, as I'm super curious to hear what the Android community is thinking. Until next time, this has been Jordan Floyd with 9to5 Google. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.